Hello and welcome to Pardon the Interception, Season 32, Week 9, with your hosts, Lee Wood.
You got Conrad Williams. Hello, everyone.
Nick Taylor, hello.
Okay, let's start off as we do every single week and look at the GFL. Conrad, the first game we've got here is the Ventura Wildcats at the Toronto Stars. What can you say about this?
Yeah, this is the big one. This probably was the big game of the week. The GFL in this particular week was quite a lot of cases of big teams battering minnows, but this one is a top of the table clash. So two teams, both with pretty strong records, going up against one another. And yeah, it was actually quite a one-sided battle, considering the fact that it was at the top of the table. So Ventura, got away relatively early and didn't look back. They just kept on producing on the pass offense. Not super high completion percentage, but still racking up a couple of touchdowns, 100 QB rating, all that good stuff, plenty of yards. And yeah, they just didn't really look like they were going to be stopped. With the running game also contributing 3 touchdowns, it was pretty comprehensive. But yeah, both teams were in a strong position going into this, and it just cemented, Ventura at the top of their table in division, and they will now be looking forward to the playoffs with optimism, I think.
Okay, a resounding win here. Not really much else I can comment on here, Nick.
Yeah, I think as Conrad alluded to, like these are two teams we've been loosely covering over the last 2 weeks because they've been battling it out at the top of the table. And impressive win from the Wildcats here, away from home. It's always a bit tougher playing away, and they've done a fantastic job of winning this game.
Okay, next game we've got to look at is the Emperors at the Hawks. Conrad, what brought you to this game?
Well, I feel like we haven't really given the Emperors very much time on PTI, so it was worth having a look at one of their games. But also, the interesting thing I found in this one was that the teams going into it, you would have an expectation that the Hawks weren't going to do particularly well, given the Hawks' record going into this one. They were at least playing at home, but they were going into it with a relatively weak record, while the Emperors were sort of 50-50, 4-4 going in. But actually, the result turned out to defy expectations, and the Hawks produced a massive number of passing yards, 6 touchdowns from their quarterback, Aritium. And it's just massive quantities of short zone. Well, I think it's mostly short zone, with a 39 first down total. It was definitely an offensive masterclass here from the Hawks.
Yeah, 39 first downs is not a number you often see. And just a good all-round performance, 681 passing yards. Them's a lot of yards.
Yeah, that's one impressive receiving unit there. Like 3 players over 100 yards, 2 players over 200 yards.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the first downs being 33 passing, 3 rushing, 3 penalties, all the 3s. It's just nice.
If only we had Brian O'Farrell to sit here and pronounce it. Brings us on to looking at the final week and the playoff picture. So here we can see that the NFC seems to be locked up with who is going to be appearing, perhaps just with playoff position to account for. We've got the AFC with most of those places locked up, and then 3 games to look at here. Conrad, which of these games do you think have the biggest implications on the playoffs? Who has the chance to be the biggest upset win here, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, these ones, they kind of look again like it's going to be a walk in the park for teams playing at home with the superior record, looking to just punch their ticket for the playoffs. I think in reality, the Raiders are probably there already one way or another. And you'd be likely to favor them anyway. I guess the question then is it a must win for District 12? How much do they have to win by? That sort of stuff I haven't calculated. But that, you'd expect basically all of the teams who are on a higher record to get their extra win. and which would then mean that it's not enough for the Armadillos, right? They can't catch up. So the one question mark then is can the Breakers produce an upset at the Raiders, who have been very strong this season? Because that could be enough to sway things a bit. But yeah, we will see what happens. Raiders' run game has been excellent. So the Breakers need to come in and surprise them, or just rack up a lot of passing yards on them and just outscore them possibly.
Okay, Nick, anything further to add?
No, it's in the hands of the Gunslingers. This one for the wild card slot, I believe. I think the Raiders look like they're already locked up, so it's just a matter of how, like, where they want to be in the standings, really. Gunslingers, they win, they go through. Armadillos will win and cross their fingers, and Breakers have an outside chance if they can get something going against the Raiders this week.
The question is, you've got the Raiders already locked for a playoff berth, and they can't make the number 1 or number 2 seed. Do they just rest players, protect from injury, and does that potentially mean the Breakers can get to 6-4? It's going to be an interesting one. That makes that Boston Pirates Gunslingers match probably a little bit more important than, I believe, District 12 is Theo, is it? Yeah, it probably makes that game a lot more important than he wishes it was.
Yeah, I mean, the Armadillos and Gunslingers want to win, need to win, really. But yeah, the Raiders one is interesting because, yeah, you've always got these Week 10 playoff situations, and we'll probably see a few of these as we walk through the other leagues, where you get to Week 10, if you've got nothing much to play for and you're already locked for playoffs, possibly even locked for home field, or you can't get home field, there start to be questions about, well, you just rest a lot of key players and make sure they don't get injured.
Okay. So move on to the Atlantic. The first game we've got to look at is 2 mainstays of the Atlantic, the Glenbrook Kings versus the Tayside Tigers. Nick, talk us through this extremely close game.
Yeah, so this was a game you're probably looking at the Kings to win it. They've been playing quite well recently. They're 4-4. They were pushing for a playoff spot. They needed a win here to keep up with the opposition, so to speak. And with it being a divisional game, I'm sure Clay will have wanted to have got that win over the Tigers, because it's always nice to beat the Tigers. They're always competitive, so getting a win here would have been lovely for Clay. But unfortunately, the Tigers have. As I said, they're always competitive, and they've managed to squeak over the line here, 22-21. Lots of turnovers in this game, 7-9 here. So you'd probably expect Tayside to have maybe lost this game on the turnover to deficit. But it looks like Bogard got going for a few yards, and the short zone passing is. Added another 150 yards, and the Tigers have done a good job of getting over the line. I'm sure Clay will be disappointed to have lost this one, but it's an unfortunate one, but well played by the Tigers, and unlucky Clay with this one, I feel.
It's always good to see that the Tigers were a short passing team when I left the Atlantic, and they're still a short passing team when I joined as well. I like this level of consistency.
Yeah.
Conrad, anything further to add?
I mean, that's one certain thing about the Tigers, certainly, is they've been very, very consistently throughout their history have been a short passing first team. They've had the odd running back here and there, but mostly it's, you're going to get lots of short pass. I don't quite know what's going on with the quarterback situation here, because poor old Brickler has absolutely bricked it and has a quarterback rating of 19 with 3 interceptions, whereas Bacala has done significantly better. You wonder whether there's maybe like a young rookie or age 1 being blooded in there at the late stages of the season, when the Tigers felt maybe they couldn't really do much anymore and wanted to get some experience on the youngster. But yeah, either way, they've managed to snatch the win here, and they in a very, very messy game in terms of turnovers.
Okay, and then the other game we've got to look at in the Atlantic is the Spitfires at the Outlaws. Conrad, care to lead us through this?
Yeah, well, the stop press as we are producing this is that we've just heard that Phil Holton is going to be leaving the Outlaws at the end of the season. So we'll be sad to see you go, Phil. Hopefully you continue to enjoy the Big Sky at least. Yeah, I mean, closer than we expected, I think, this one, because, the talk going in will have been Spitfires are on top, Spitfires are going to win the division, Spitfires are the better team, etc., etc. But the Outlaws definitely made this one competitive. They did very well in the first quarter. They did, of course, suffer from a bit of fumbleitis, but who doesn't this season? And ultimately, it was probably the lack of strength on the defensive line that caused them to come undone, because running back Boland for the Spitfires put in a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns. And we do know that Phil's line is very quick, so they're good at putting on pass rush pressure, less good at stopping the running back just trundling on through. So that's where it got to in the end, and still pretty close points-wise.
I agree. I expected the Spitfires to win this game. I probably divisional game at home. I think the score's about where I expected it to be. Nick, anything further to add?
I think it just shows the quality of the Spitfires. They didn't have the best of starts to the season, and I think they've knocked off 4 or 5 wins in a row, and taken the division, taken the top spot in the division quite well. Feels been competitive throughout the season, and he should be pretty happy with this performance. So yeah.
Okay. Then let's look at the playoff picture. So this one we've had to split across 2 slides. We look at the CFC first. Nick, I'm going to leave this one to you because I do not know the CFC as well as I should.
Okay, so as you can see, the divisions are all divisional titles are taken by the Magpies, Stallions, Stingrays, and Sharks. The Islanders have locked in a wildcard spot here as well. In terms of the second wildcard spot, that would be the Scorpions. Myself, we are 5-4. We win, we lock up the spot. We lose, and any of the Stampede, Warriors, Heroes, or Kings could take that spot. Because I think we're third in the division, so that doesn't help us if we lose. And so yeah, let's say I did lose. The Warriors and Stampede have very tough games. The Heroes at Tayside is another tough game, and even the Kings at the Generals is going to be tough because the Generals have come back fairly well the last few weeks. So if I were to lose, I'd probably put the Kings as in the driving seat to take that last spot. But obviously, I'd be banking on myself to win this week and to take that last spot.
I can tell you one thing from my years of being in the Delta and speaking to Aaron and watching him on multiple podcasts. Aaron is not going to let the pedal up. The Stallions are going to come out all guns blazing as the number 1 seed is on the line in that game. If he could take a loss and still be the number 1 seed, I'd expect him to maybe take his foot off the pedal a little bit, but home field advantage is so much more important than it's ever been with all of the HS1 and HS2 players that you now have. Conrad, anything on the CFC before we move on to the MFC?
Now, when you say HS1, HS2, I just think that we've got a lot of trains now in Gridiron. But
choo-choo.
I think CFC. Nick is going to try and win, and it's probably considered to be reasonably likely to win. And otherwise, it's a right old mess with all these 4-5 teams trying to go to 5-5.
Okay, and then the MFC, the Far Superior Conference. We've got 3 of the divisions locked up. You've got the Sonics and the Blues fighting out, which also is an interesting week for the Sonics, which isn't at the bottom, but is a game that I probably would highlight as well. The Sonics are playing to win their division. The Mariners are playing for number 1 seed. If the Mariners lose, the Mariners can actually drop to about 3rd or 4th seed. It's a really messy week in terms of seeding for the top 3 or 4 spots. But the last playoff slot, I think, if the Redcoats win, Conrad, if you win, I think you're locked. I think you're further enough ahead of the Nighthawks at the minute.
We have a much higher points difference, so we need to basically win. It's the same old thing. Make sure you win, and that's all right. But of course, the Sonics and Blues is a fun one because it's unclear where they will finish in division, who's going to be 1, who's going to be 2. So that's still to be determined.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think the Comets put up a stronger game. The advantage Nighthawks have is they're at home. Nick, any thoughts on the MFC? I think we may have temporarily lost a Nick.
He's somewhat frozen. Let's continue.
Let's move on to the Big Sky, the league that me and Conrad know everything about. So first game we'll take a look at is the Titans and the Stormers. So Conrad, let's work through this together until we get a Nick back.
Yeah, interesting one. I mean, obviously we can see immediately from the box score the Titans are the winners, but poor old Washington did very well in terms of their production, their overall offensive production, time of possession. They had the ball for over 40 minutes out of the 60-minute game, put up a lot of yards passing and rushing. Plenty of first downs passing and rushing. What really went wrong for them? It's interceptions. Interceptions went wrong for them. They threw 3 picks, and whereas the Titans did not throw any. And that was the big difference here. And the passing game might have been very productive for Washington, but it was not sufficiently consistent. So that probably is the key difference. And meanwhile, quarterback Villegas of the Titans walks away with the MVP, having done very well to get 75% complete, 4 touchdowns, 156 quarterback rating, which is massive. And sacked once but no picks.
It is always disappointing to see that Casher did not cash in on those interceptions and get a score out of them.
No, he just picked it off and then fell over.
But an interception's an interception, and they're always going to help out your team. Nick, anything to add on the Titans Stormers game?
I have no idea what you've said, but it's a game that certainly was one for the playoffs. Good win for the Titans. That puts them in a good position for playoff contention, and I think the Stormers with this loss are close to out of it, unfortunately.
Okay. Second game we've got to look at is the Port Royals Buccaneers at the Mount Dora Massive, up the Massive, and a game with 14 total points. Nick, do you want to lead us through this?
Yep. So I think we covered the reverse fixture earlier on in the season, and the Massive got a massive win. And it was big at the time to beat the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers have been pretty impressive up until this point. The big part of this game is them stopping Davies. Davies averaging only 2.3 yards per carry is huge, because that doesn't happen very often. Throughout the season, we see Davies averaging 5-6 yards per carry quite easily. So the Massive stopping Davies is a big thing. It's big for this matchup, the division, and it shows how good the Massive are on defense going into the playoffs, which is quite something as well. The most interesting part of this was it was won on a safety, and it was a safety of Davies getting blitzed in his own end zone with the ball. So that doesn't happen very often. The old run blitz loss for 5 or 6 yards, I think it was. It's nice to see plays like that, just because they're so different to what we normally are used to.
Yeah, love a defensive slugfest. And under 21 points total, under 14, as you say, 14 points total.
If anyone wants to see run blitz and sacks in the backfield, I recommend finding your local British American football team and watching them. Right. Anything else before we look at the stand-ins? Okay.
Go for it.
So, Nick, do you want to lead us through the PFC?
Yep, I can try. We've got the Rivets and the Eagles and the Bay Packers have locked up their division. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Titans' loss puts them in a slightly worse position than the Stormers. So the Maroons look like the most likely to pick up, I think it's a wild card spot. The Generals and Chargers are battling out for their division, if I remember correctly. And the Stormers and Surfers, Stormers have a reasonable chance of the second wildcard spot, assuming the Maroons don't end up losing to the Bulldogs, which I can't really see happening. And the Surfers are a real outside chance away to the Eagles. Maybe, as we mentioned before, the Eagles don't go at it too hard, and therefore the Surfers have a little bit of a chance. But we're looking at the Maroons taking a wild card spot. Generals are in the driving seat, but Packers will probably want to win that game and at least lock up second seed, which puts the Chargers in sort of wild card shootout spot with the Stormers.
Okay. Conrad, anything to add before we move to the other conference?
No, it's relatively open in that you've only got 3 that are absolutely confirmed, and the rest is sort of still jostling around for wild cards and who wins the division, which is a good place to be going into week 10.
Okay, and the LFC's a slightly clearer picture, I see here.
Nick? We've got the Fire, the Hornets and the Shadows and the Massive all taking their divisions. We're looking for two playoff places. I think there's a lot of teams on 4 and 5 who have an outside shot of making it, but based on this set of fixtures, I think the Sun Devils finish above them if they do beat the Buccaneers, and then you'd expect one of the Statesmen and Rhinos to take their games. I think we're probably looking at the Buccaneers and the Statesmen here. It's just going to come down to points differentials. So I think the Statesmen and Rhinos they've got nice fixtures. I'd expect the Buccaneers to probably beat the Sun Devils. That's what we're looking at here.
I'm looking forward to seeing running back Tripson catching lots of passes from the backfield in the playoffs as he's locked in.
He's also locked up 2,000 yards this week. So he got 6 touchdowns this week, I think.
Mon Dieu.
Yeah. So still doing the business.
On to the Continental. So we've got the Saskatchewan Venom and the Dublin Thunder. That's the Port Royals. So, given the records, I wouldn't have expected the Thunder to put up as many points as they did, but this was a real ding-dong battle here, and the Venom just managing to hold onto their lead after a mighty fourth quarter comeback by the Thunder here, and Dublin even won the turnover differential as well. So a 3-point loss at home where there wasn't an awful lot to separate these teams. I think that Coach Stokes may feel a little aggrieved by this.
He was obviously trying to mount a comeback charge right at the end with 22 points in the fourth quarter. But yeah, I think ultimately, the expectations were not high for the Thunder, and they've outperformed them here. Unfortunately, didn't come with the results, and that's the big missing factor. But running game obviously on form. 25 carries, 159 yards for Roanoke. Excellent yards per carry, nice long gain. Certainly, their running game looks in good shape for whatever comes next.
Nick, anything further to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's great news for the Thunder, really, because it's just one of those, results at the end of the season that perks you up a little bit. You're in good stead, ready for next season. You find out if you've got any holes in your team, and this shows they potentially don't. I think Stuart will be pleasantly surprised by this result, and John will be happy with the win here.
Okay, and then the other game we have to look at is the Winterfell Westies at the Virginia Zulus. Once again, one that you would have thought was the result, the winning team doesn't shock me, but the margin of win does in what was a predominantly passing base battle. Coach Lyon managed to hold on to a win, and looking like he's propelling his team into the off season with this. But the Zulus, I think, there's a lot of good signs that have come out of this season that they look like they're on the up.
Yeah, interesting that 4 passing touchdowns is a team record for the Zulus. So clearly they don't have a history of passing, because 4's not that many. But yeah, they've managed to get it done with a double sort of a combination of quarterbacks. They've not played the same guy for the whole throughout. They've brought in McClure on 5 different downs. So you wonder exactly what the setup was there. Might be one of those kind of short down situations where you bring in a mobile quarterback to possibly give you like an option of you can do bootleg or something like that. But yeah, good bit of tandem play there.
I mean, we all remember Troy McClure from such plays as the bootleg and the QB draw. Nick, anything to add?
I think you've got it all covered here. Yeah, good game and a good result for the Westies.
Okay, let's move on to the playoff picture. A little simpler here than the last couple of leagues we've covered. The RFC pretty much locked up. A little bit of positional maths to play for. UFC still a wildcard slot there, and also the number 1 seed. That's all to play for as well. Looking at the games to watch, you would have thought the Destruction, even though they're away against an 0-9 team, should manage to pull out a win, but there's that first win incentive on the line for the Royals as well. So perhaps they will pull up an upset at home here. Think if the Destruction win, they take the last slot. Is that my readings correct? I think of the league.
Yeah.
Yeah, Badgers, of course, bowl favourites behind Strom and Anguta, the big running back combo.
How did Strom perform this week? Did anyone remember to check?
Strom not watched. Disaster.
I haven't checked it either. I only checked Tripson. I've become a Tripson fan over Strom recently.
Oh, well, we look forward to Strom storming the playoffs up. Anybody got anything to add before we move on to the Delta?
I hope you mean Stromming the playoffs up.
Okay. The Delta this week, we'll look at the Melksham Hornets versus the Milgay Metros. I learned how to pronounce that from a great article that Simon Sharp put up. If you haven't read it, go and read it. Even if you're not in the Delta, it is an amazing read. Then looking at this, the Milgay Metros, they've not been doing too well this season, and the Hornets are looking like they could squeak their way into the playoffs here. And Milgay sort of come out all guns blazing, put up 500 passing yards and their customary minus 2 yards on rushing. They do not believe in running the ball at all. I know that Coach Sharp has openly said that he's in a rebuild, that he doesn't think he's going to come out anytime soon, but I think this is a very, very promising sign. And if it wasn't for that slight turnover differential and his kicker, I believe, missing an extra point in the overtime as well, this very, very nearly was a what would have been quite a big shock result.
Yeah, you never want to get into overtime and then find that your kicker fails to win the game for you. That is not where you want to be. But it's interesting match. Definitely no interest whatsoever in running the ball on the Milngay side. Yeah,
the Metros have certainly got the passing down pat right now. It's certainly encouraging if they are in rebuild, if they can do this to a team that's there or thereabouts in the playoff contentions, then it's good signs for the future.
And the other game we have to look at is the Forsbrook Fury, the Ipswich Patriots, a key game in this division, which was still quite open, but good strong start by the Patriots in this game, but the Fury just proved too much with Razzlefaust just having another ridiculous game, which is what he seemed to do every single week. Just rushing the ball for nearly 400 yards. that's going to win you a lot of games because you're going to keep possession. Keeping 63% of the possession in a running game didn't give Holly's passing offense the amount of time that they possibly needed to squeak those few extra points onto the board.
Yeah, 21 unanswered points in the third quarter for the Fury, so that really turned it back on its head.
And a rushing record of 386 rushing yards. I'm actually kind of surprised because the Fury have had a very strong rushing game for a few years, so I'm surprised that's a record. But 65 rushes is a huge amount.
Yeah, that's a lot of rushing for one team. I think where we've looked at the D in the past, the Patriots have looked very good against the passing offense, and this maybe they're not quite there with the rushing defense at the moment. Impressive performance from the Fury and Razzlefaust this one.
Moving on to the playoff picture in the D. So the GFC is an interesting one. We pretty much everyone has to play this week. Seeding is very much on the line here. The Robber Barons, they're probably going to take the number 1 seed there. The last slot, if the Hornets win, they can get it. If the Hornets lose and the Cougars win, the Cougars get it. For those of you looking for the Venom to be knocked out the playoffs, you want the Cougars to win and the Hornets to lose, as the Cougars have knocked the Venom out the playoffs in the past 5 or 6 seasons in a row. And I believe if the results go as we're expecting, they would be meeting in the wildcard round as well. Someone did sit there and do the maths on it. VFC number 1 seed is Katanas if they win. Katanas if they win. Sunblazers if Frome lose. The Colts, the Sunblazers, and the Katanas all have relatively easy games this week. The Jets are at the Patriots this week, and I don't think that I can improve my playoff position with the Jets, but we'll see what happens. I think I'm playing in wildcard week. Wildcards. It's likely going to be the Centurions and the Fury. The Rogues might be able to pull off an upset at the Fury. The Rogues did just lose to my lesser running game this week, so we'll see if they can shore up the running game against the Fury. If they don't, the Fury should win that game. They're heavily favourite despite being away. And then the Centurions against the Hayes. I think the Hayes, they've got their single win. They've got what they need for the first win incentive. So I think they're probably going to be running rookies out most of this week. Any other points that anyone wanted to raise on this?
Who's your pick for the bowl, Lee?
Who's my pick for the bowl? Lone Stars, Sunblazers, and Lone Stars to win.
It's fair enough. We know that Aaron Sansford's very good. I haven't heard much about the Sunblazers apart from what we've done on this podcast. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the VFC all shakes out once it gets to playoff time.
Go look at their game from this week. I didn't include it because it was a complete schooling game, but they have been very, very strong. Okay, Nick, anything to add before we look at the Empire?
No, it all looks exciting and all looks down to that Fury Rogues game and who takes that one down.
That's going to be a key game. Right, the Empire. We've got the Odense Lions versus the Wichita Wranglers. Nick, what brought you to this?
So the Wranglers, they still top their division. The Lions have been a bit hit and miss this season. We saw a little bit of a recovery in the middle of the season. We wondered whether they were going to push on from there or have hit a few more stumbling blocks, and unfortunately they hit a few stumbling blocks. But they've taken the Wranglers down here. The Wranglers were looking pretty good for the division, and so this is a big win for the Lions. And it shows they're on the path to being competitive again. An overtime win. We always like to see an overtime win. It creates exciting games, and we can see it's the classic passing versus rushing game here. there's a lot of good things to see for the Lions here, and I think they'll be pretty pleased with this result going into next season. Zane would have liked to have got the win this week and locked up a playoff spot. I think they're still on the line to, in a bit of a shootout next week. But not too much to be worried about for the Wranglers, but just a little bit of doubt in there after this loss.
I like to think, even though I know this isn't how it played out, I like to think that Carter came out for the very first play, attempted to throw the ball, spectacularly failed so bad the coach just went, "No, you're out."
Yeah, pulled on his first attempt. That would be good. I think, that it's a funny one because it's an upset win at the end of the day, this one, with the Lions records going into it. But as Nick says, I think it will just be seen as a blip for the Wranglers ultimately, and they will continue, they'll regroup, and they'll continue their push for the playoffs.
I think they do have a tough game in the last week, so it'll be interesting to watch.
Okay, the other game we've got to look at is the Thundering Herd and the Barossa Power. I'm guaranteed points, I believe.
Always with the Thundering Herd. There we go. Yeah, it's a top of the table clash, but there's three teams still vying for top spot in this division, and this was quite a key game for the division. So whoever won this game was most likely to be a game ahead, and so the Thundering Herd managed to put together probably their most convincing win of the season, as most of their other wins, as we've known, have mostly been between 3 to 10 points or so. So to really put the hammer down and score a lot of points, it bodes well for the Herd heading into the playoffs. It's an impressive performance, and they've done what they needed to do by beating the Power, and it's an away performance, and they're not easy to do at the moment, that's for sure.
Yeah, given his MVP performance, you could say this was Crockett's game. Okay,
and then I think this is the most complex playoff picture. As you can see, we've got every single table and every single game up. Nick, I think you're the one that spent the most time looking at the E across this season. So do you want to talk us through some of the key games here?
Yeah, so obviously we have the Tomahawks have locked up their division. They've looked pretty impressive this season. But the rest is pretty much all to play for over in the BFC. The Wranglers would have locked up their division with a win last week. But the Russians are still knocking on the door. They've been picking up wins almost all season. So that'll be an interesting one. The big game, I think, this week is going to be the High Hunters against the Wranglers. High Hunters are, they dispatch a lot of teams, but the tougher games they haven't necessarily won this season, and they still need to win because the Patriots are tied there on record with them. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting week over in the BFC. And then if we head over to the PFC, as we mentioned before, the Kings have looked very strong. 422 points this season. That's a lot of points. They only lost to the High Hunters, if memory serves me correctly. And then the Bounty have also racked up a lot of points as well. Top of their division, they've looked pretty strong all season as well. Last week we looked at the Gamblers and the Rangers, and they're still battling out for top spot in that division. And then, as mentioned before, the Thundering Herd are a game ahead of the Sharks and the Power, so it's all in their hands. And then if we head down to the wild cards, we're looking at the Gamblers, Rangers, and Rogues. But if a couple of them lose, then we've got the Chaos involved, the Texans involved, the Sharks, and the Power involved. So lots of games, lots to play for still in the Empire. So if you're looking for playoff games, the Empire could be very exciting this week.
Okay, it definitely looks like the playoffs started last week for a lot of teams. Conrad, anything to add?
Yeah, it's just a bit of a mind-melting one, the Empire playoff picture. I don't even know where really to start with it. So thanks, Nick, for trying to help us get our heads around it all. I mean, I think the Kings have looked really, really absolutely amazing this season. So they've already clinched anyway. I think it's a shame the Hollywood Hornets didn't produce much glitz and glamour, but you've got the equivalent is the Gamblers, I guess. But unfortunately, I think they took last week they took a really bad injury to one of their key players, which I think is going to crimp them a bit going into the tail end of the season.
They lost their running back, didn't they?
Yeah, he got a G.
So with him out, it's going to be hard for them to, even if they do limp into the playoffs, they may struggle. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to actually seeing what some of the playoff games go down, how they go down, based on look at what we've seen this season.
Okay. So, Nick, any words of advice for coaches going into week 10? Probably looking more at the coaches that aren't looking at the playoff football this season.
So if you're outside of the playoff positions, you're probably looking, most of your coaching is done now. So if you're worried about injuries to those players you've been trying to coach all season, get them in the starting team, get some XP into them, see how they work, work out your formations for next season, maybe try them out. You can see where you've got gaps, and it's a good week to try things out if you're not in the playoffs. And what I always also say, because as brought up, I think, in the sound bites, was a few people, get a little bit frustrated with losing or not quite feeling like they know what to do. Feel free to reach out to any experienced coach. Almost everyone will help you out. I'm sure any of us guys will help you out if you want to just chat before any game planning, or where you want to head towards next season, anything like that. More than happy to help out. So yeah, like just take some time to think, where do I want my team next season? What do I want them to do? And even if it's maybe I just want to change direction, work out, if you want to change direction, maybe there's a few players in there you can bring in and start that ball rolling.
Good words. Conrad, anything from you?
Yeah, just to echo a bit of that. I mean, there's no harm done if you're not in contention for a playoff spot. There's no harm done in trying to start thinking about young players, particularly. So if you've got players who are rookies, age ones, where you think, look, they haven't really got any experience yet, they're going to have the jitters. Maybe just get them in now, play them week 10, get them some of those minutes. Those minutes will count in your favor when the following season comes along, and you won't have to go into week 1 thinking, oh, they're going to lose a percentage of their level because they're going to be so nervous with this so-called first game jitters, where they don't have minutes on them. So no harm in bringing in some young players, particularly if you think, I've invested in this guy in coaching, I'm expecting him to hopefully age up to a starting level. Take the chance now if you think it's viable, because you may not be really, really, really chasing that win in week 10.
Okay, definitely agree with everything that's been said there. Anybody got anything else before we close?
Good luck, and hope you win your games if you're looking to head to the playoffs.
Crunch week. I hope everyone enjoys themselves for week 10. And if you don't make the playoffs, it's all right. You can just chill out and watch some more Pardon the Interception while we get through those.
It's goodbye from me.
Bye from me.
Goodbye from me.